Hey guys, how you doing? Luna here with a new video for the channel. Welcome to yet another review. This time is a turn for The Car by the legendary British alternative rock, now jazz band Arctic Monkeys. This is the 7th studio album by the Arctic Monkeys. I'm pretty sure that you all know who they are due to albums like Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, My Favorite Worst Nightmare, and of course their commercial juggernaut AM. Before this album was even released, I was already, thinking that this will be a flop because of the singles. Honestly, even though I don't think they're bad songs at all, actually they work as highlights in this album. Some of them, they reminded me of the singles of their previous album, which is not really my favorite, and actually I believe it's one of their worst. So I was kind of thinking that, even though the songs were different, they were trying to do something similar or in the same style. But again, something wonderful about music, and the reason why I love it so much is because its specialty is to prove me wrong, because this album is actually quite fucking great. Again, the sound that they went for in this album is this jazz funk combination. There's nothing similar to rock, it's impressive to see the early works of the band, this garage rock tunes really accelerating and heavy and fast paced, and now they're doing this. It's amazing to see a band grow as much as the Arctic Monkeys have grown, especially in the case of Alex Turner. I believe that the greatest growth we've seen in this band is in his case. Before, he used to do this loud ass performances, and now he's doing this really thin, breathy, high-toned vocals that can be sexy and obnoxious at the same time. I don't really know, I'm not the public for that type of vocals, but they fit into the concept of the album, which is what I'm about to talk. This album has this sexy, funky, laid-back tunes that, even though it didn't work in their previous album, in here it sounds so beautiful. The opening track is a great example of this, with his pianos, Alex Turner doing his thing, the drums being kind of in the background, but that's pretty much the point, and this beautiful string arrangements that come into play in many of the songs in this album. They create this sound where it kind of still sounds like the Arctic Monkeys, the Arctic Monkeys we all love, but in a totally different way. Already in AM, they strived away from the garage rock thing they were doing, but here it's almost like the band we used to know is nowhere to be seen, but still present somehow. The soul of the album and the soul of the music is still the same. Again, in the opening track, There Better Be a Miracle is a clear example of how the rest of the album is going to sound like. The strings in this song are really well mixed onto the track. It is true that they can kind of overdo it. For example, in the track Sculptures of Anything Goes, Alex Turner sounds both horny and high and hallucinating at the same time. Again, I know that I said that Alex singing was a highlight on this album, but sometimes if he takes it too high to the point where you can tell that he's struggling to deliver these notes, it doesn't really sound good. It only sounds annoying and half-assed to a certain point. Like in the track Jet Skis on the Moats, where again, it does put up quite a sexy, groovy ambience, but Alex in this track seemed to have such a hard time delivering the notes that it can kind of take you away from the atmosphere that the song tries to, put into you. One of the most popular tracks in this album, Body Paint, is a track that it starts really beautifully with the synths playing at the beginning of the track, but at a certain point, and that happens with quite a few tracks here in this album, it becomes quite a mess because it has these electric guitars that have nothing to do in the track, like literally take you off the whole aura of the track. And then again, you have these string arrangements that, when used correctly in the album, they're beautiful and they can add a touch of elegance. But again, in this track, it seems like they're overusing it. Like it was so unnecessary, or at the very least, it wasn't well introduced onto the track. And I guess you can say the same thing about the title track here, The Car, where it starts off beautifully with this acoustic guitar. It's all really nice until the strings come in, kind of like, what are they doing here? The same thing with that half-assed, horrible guitar solo that lasts like 5 seconds only. Not exactly killing off the mood, but it's definitely a point where you feel some sort of awkwardness in the track. The chemistry that the band has throughout the whole listen it breaks in this moments, and you can really, it can really throw you off. I do think that it's a really nice listen, honestly. I wouldn't take any song away from this album, if I'm being honest. I think that every track is necessary, every track brings a different style, but inside the same type of sound that the album introduces you to. So in that sense, they do pretty well, but it's obvious that you have some sort of levels of quality that can be really fluctuant. Once you listen to one of the tracks that uses the strings in a nice way, when you listen to the ones that don't, it can be pretty obvious, and it's hard to miss. Many of the examples of string arrangements being used properly in this album come in the second half. For example, in the track Big Ideas, one of my favorite tracks from the album, as well as the the intro track There Better Be a Miracle. Another highlight would be Hello You, which I'm not really gonna get into detail about this track, because again, it's pretty much the same concept over and over again. That's one thing. The album can be a bit repetitive. It's not that I think the album should be more diverse or anything, but it is true that they kind of abuse this formula in every single one of the tracks. Actually, my favorite track from this album, Mr. Schwartz, isn't really my favorite one because it has the best melody. It's not because it's the most complex track. It is because pretty much it just changes the style of songwriting that it's being featured in every other song on this album. Mr. Schwartz, it's mostly an acoustic track that by the end of it, by the bridge, it adds violins, and you can hear synths as well. The track itself feels way different from everything else you've heard in the album, starting from Alex's performance. Because already by this point, we're talking about the second to last track on this album, you want a change. Even if you like the style and you're able to, to just lay back and listen to it, you want something to change, something to spice up the things. Because again, even if you like a formula or a type of songwriting, you cannot listen to the same thing over and over and over again. So this track offers that relief and that, change of pace that we needed by this point of the album. I wish there were more tracks like this on the record, because honestly, the worst sin this album commits is how repetitive it can get. Pretty much that's the only bad thing about it. Of course, I can add more things, like for example, Alex's performance being sometimes a bit too sexy, let's say. Nothing sexy about it. I mean that he often tries to act as sexy as he can, but is not always connecting or is not always delivering that type of sexiness that I believe he wanted to deliver. Because overall, the whole groove of the album in terms of instrumentation, I love it. I think it's great. I'm a fan. So really, even though I felt kind of scared for this album, I didn't really think that this was going to be such a good project. I'm kind of happy that they found a style that they could, really be themselves without doing the same thing over and over again as they were doing up until AM. I'm really happy that they found this kind of middle lane behind being Arctic Monkeys and being something totally different. I definitely think that they still have room for improvement. This is not a perfect album overall. I think it has quite a few flaws in terms of, the ones I mentioned before, repetitiveness and performance-wise. I do believe that they overuse a lot of the elements that make this album such a great project. Even though I like it, I don't want to hear that much of it. In the meantime, I think this is a great track list. I think this is a really solid album. One of the most solid listens I've heard from the Arctic Monkeys ever since their debut, and I mean it 100%. Even though I kind of miss that, teenage sound they had earlier in their career, I do like to see, evolution in an artist, different takes on different genres, and the Arctic Monkeys with this album, that's exactly what they delivered. So definitely 100% loving this album. Totally check it out if you like the Arctic Monkeys, and if you like this kind of jazzy, soulful funk tunes that they delivered here in this project. I had to listen to this album quite a few times because since I liked it so much at first, I had to know if this was me fangirling, but pretty much I'm not really that much of a great Arctic Monkeys fan, so I'm pretty confident in my rating now, because pretty much I'm giving this album an 8. That is it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the videos that I upload. What do you think about this album? Did you like it? Did you not? Leave me your opinions down below. What is your favorite Arctic Monkeys album? Is it this one? Is it whatever people say I am? That's what I'm not. My favorite Worst Nightmare, Humbug. Let me know as well in the comments. I'm definitely excited to see what they're going to do in the future with this new sound, so let's just wait and see what happens. With that being said, once again, I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you guys soon with a new video. But until then, bye.